All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're basically stepping into the shoes of digital detectives, and I want you to lean in closely for this one. We're looking at what can really only be described as a digital cold case. You know, in our modern age of endless scrolling and overflowing data, we're so used to having every single piece of information handed to us with complete, perfect context. But what happens when all that context is just stripped away? What happens when literally all you're left with is a single, solitary breadcrumb leading into the vast unknown of the internet? Well, that is exactly the puzzle we're going to unpack today.
Because really, that is the central, burning question driving this entire thing. What is actually hidden inside? I mean, it's human nature to be curious, right? When we see a closed door, an unlabeled box, or, in our case, a raw, unclicked link, our minds just immediately start racing with all the possibilities. By the end of this explainer, we aren't just going to be staring at a singular, incredibly sparse string of text. We're going to understand the profound mystery of digital memory. We have one clue, literally just one. So let's not wait any longer.
Okay, here it is. This is our entire source material. Exhibit A. It just says handwritten notes, https://drive.google.com/file/d, and then it just trails off into a string of random encrypted characters. There's no author attached to this at all. No date, no summary of what these notes even pertain to. I mean, are they the frantic scribbles of a brilliant scientist on the verge of a breakthrough? Are they a deeply personal journal entry, or, I don't know, are they just a grocery list from 2014? We have to treat this raw Google Drive URL exactly like a physical piece of evidence, because in the landscape of the internet, that is precisely what it is. It's a pointer to a document that is shrouded in absolute mystery.
To really wrap our heads around what we're dealing with here, we need to zero in on a specific concept, the digital artifact. Think of it like a byproduct or a fragment, a pointer of digital data that's been left behind, completely divorced from its surrounding context. In the physical world, an artifact might be, say, a piece of ancient pottery dug up from the dirt. But in our world, in the total absence of the actual notes themselves, this isolated web address transforms into our artifact. We can't analyze the notes, so we have to analyze the artifact on its own merits. We literally have to look at the shell that holds the ghost.
And there's this incredible, almost ironic tension here between two totally different worlds. On one side, we have the analog concept, handwritten notes. Think about what that phrase evokes for a second. It's intimate and implies physical touch, the scent of ink on paper, the unique, messy, beautiful imperfections of human handwriting. It's deeply, deeply personal. And then on the exact opposite side, we have the digital reality, a sterile, hyper-specific, encrypted, cloud-based Google Drive URL. It is just a string of math sitting on a server farm somewhere. The irony here is absolutely fascinating to me. We've got this highly personal human medium trapped inside a cold, unfeeling digital cage.
Let's actually break this down further. We're going to dissect our singular clue piece by piece, exactly like a forensic investigator dissecting a scene. The anatomy of our artifact has 4 distinct parts. First, we have the human label, handwritten notes. This is literally the only subjective clue we possess. Second, we have the bridge, that simple little colon separating the human world from the machine world. Third, the protocol, the HTTPS, ensuring a secure encrypted tunnel to wherever this thing is going. And finally, the cloud location, that drive.google.com address that tells us exactly which corporate server holds our mystery. Every single character in this artifact serves a specific structural purpose.
And it all boils down to this single integer, which really builds our understanding of just how incredibly stark our situation is. 1. We have exactly one single digital pointer. We don't have a backup file. We don't have a secondary source to cross-reference. Actually, scratch that. We don't have any surrounding context at all. We just have one isolated string of text. In the world of information analysis, this is the ultimate challenge. It forces us to slow down, It forces us to extract maximum meaning from absolute minimalism. When you only have one clue, you simply can't afford to overlook a single detail of its existence.
To put this predicament into perspective, with maybe just a touch of dark humor, think about the sheer disparity we're facing. That tiny 1% sliver, that's what we actually know. The link, the map. And that massive, overwhelming 99%, that is what we absolutely do not know, the actual contents. So the crucial takeaway here is this. We possess the key, but we are completely, utterly blind to the room it opens. It's like we're holding a treasure map, but we don't have a shovel and we don't even know if the treasure is gold or just a bunch of old tin cans.
So how do we actually proceed?
Well, if a digital archivist or an investigator were handed this file, they wouldn't just haphazardly click on it. There's a strict methodology to demystifying an artifact like this safely. Step 1. Verify the URL integrity. You inspect the link to make absolutely sure it's actually pointing to Google Drive and isn't some clever disguise for something malicious. Step 2. Attempt access to the Drive link. This is the big moment of truth. Do we even have the permissions? Is the file public, or is it locked behind a permission request wall? And finally, Step 3. Transcribe the uncovered contents. If access is magically granted, you carefully digitize and contextualize the raw notes to preserve them. It's a logical, step-by-step process designed to bring the unknown out into the light.
And this brings us to a really fascinating philosophical difference. On one axis of our situation, we have the data itself, the raw data of the URL, versus the contextualized data of the actual notes. On the other axis, we have user action, blindly clicking versus informed reading. Right now, we are entirely stuck in the quadrant of raw data and blind clicking. We hold a digital location, sure, but we do not hold actual readable knowledge. Holding URL is definitely not the same as holding information. It is literally only holding the potential for information. To move over to informed reading, we have to cross that digital threshold. Now, I want you to imagine the chronological journey of this data. How does physical ink turn into an orphaned cloud link just floating in the digital ether? Well, it starts with creation. Seconds of time where a human applies actual ink to physical paper. Then comes digitization, maybe a few minutes where someone uses their phone or a scanner to turn that paper into a PDF. Next up is the upload, mere seconds where Google Drive ingests the file and spits out this exact URL. But then comes the final, longest stage, isolation. Over months or perhaps even years, the file sits quietly on a server, but the link itself gets copied, pasted, and entirely separated from the email or message that originally explained what it even was. This is the timeline of information degradation. The context completely decays, leaving only the artifact behind.
Before we wrap this up, let's just strip away the HTTPS and the Google Drive part for a second and focus purely on those two words from our source text, handwritten notes. I want to remind you of the deeply personal, profoundly human element that is trapped somewhere behind this digital firewall. A real person, with a real life, sat down and wrote something out by hand. They deemed it important enough to digitize, important enough to upload to the cloud, and important enough to share via this specific link. Even though we are analyzing cold, hard data, there is a very real human heartbeat echoing at the center of this artifact.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to chew on. What secrets do we keep in the cloud? And what happens to our digital memory when only the link survives? Every single day, we're creating millions of these URLs. We're building this massive, global archive of human thought, but we're doing it through fragile digital pointers that can so easily lose their meaning. It really makes you wonder about your own digital footprint, doesn't it? If someone found an isolated link to one of your files 10 years from now, what would it say about you? Thank you so much for joining me on this investigative journey today. Keep exploring, stay curious, and always remember to check the context of your data.